Hello, my name's John, these are some Warhammer 40,000 Orks, and you're watching Wargames, Models and Other Hobbies. Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be painting the little details on the Warhammer 40,000 Orks I've been working on. If you haven't seen any of the other videos, I'll leave a link in the description. As with the other ones, this is a real-time painting video, so you'll see exactly how long it takes. I have pre-painted a few bits, which I'll point out in the video, but for now, let's just get started. So I'm going to start with the gloves on this one, and I'm going to use some Storm Vermin fur, which will not be as dark as the Skaven Blight dinge on the clothes, but it'll be slightly lighter, but it adds the same tone to the model. So, just going to put a little bit on my palette. And now, with these videos, I have gone for a very muted colour scheme. You don't have to do that with any of the models that you're painting. If these orcs were going to be evil sons, I'd have probably gone for some really nice reds and done their clothes in red and different tones of browns and things like that. If they were Bad Moon orcs, I'd have gone for the yellows and that kind of thing. So just so happens with these ones, I've gone for the kind of the muted colours. There will be a little addition of some colours to these ones, which I'm going to do in this video. But for now, let's just finish off these colours. Now, as with all of my videos, apologies if you can hear any traffic in the background. Sometimes it gets a little bit loud outside my house and it can come across on the video, but I have recently changed my microphone setup, so I'm hoping that doesn't occur in the same way, but if it does, apologies. Now, with these older orc models, it's possible to have some models with single gloves, double gloves, whatever, on the model itself. It all depends on how you make them. I haven't actually made any of the recent models in quite some time, so hopefully when I get hold of some, I can do a nice comparison. But for now, let's just stick with painting these ones. So that's the first glove done. You'll see I've left the little knuckle dusters on there because I'm going to be painting those with a metallic paint later on in the video. Let's get on with the second glove. Now, I've really enjoyed this series of videos painting up this orc squad. Granted, it has taken up nearly all of the month's videos, but as this is just my hobby channel, I'm quite happy with that. It's given me content to run through over the month, and it also means that there hasn't been any ridiculously long videos. Now, I do like my real-time videos because I like being able to show everyone how long it actually takes to do a project, something that isn't always the case on all the YouTube videos. If you'd prefer to watch this speedier, I don't mind you fast forwarding and so on, watching me at a faster speed, entirely down to you. Now the key thing at this point is I am being a lot more careful with how I paint these items. I don't want to go over the edges. These last little details are the final step in the process. I don't want to have to repaint other things if I go over the lines or anything like that. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to paint on this guy is the strap that's going around his upper arm, and for that I'm going to use some Rhinox hide. So again with this, I want to be nice and careful. I am going to put some metallic paint onto this where the little clasp is on it. But for now, let's just concentrate on the brown. Now my aim over the next few months is to get a lot of my models that have been just sitting around for a long time made and painted. So there's going to be a few different series of videos, I think, from making to painting of different models. So it's going to vary from all sorts of different Warhammer 40,000 races. There we go, there is that strap there. Nice and easy, that one, not difficult to do. So that is the gloves and that little strap painted. And we'll put this one aside to dry for a little bit before I do the metallic. And let's go and have a look at another one. So on this one, I've got some little wrappings, little bracelets on the wrists. For that, I'm going to go with some Rakarth flesh. So I'm sticking with these muted colours for all of this. Like I said, there will be a bit of colour, but if I was painting these, like I said, as a different Ork clan, I'd use different colours. I just quite like the idea of these ones being slightly more muted and the kind of the more naturalistic colours, but that's just what I fancy painting right now. Now, as with most paint jobs, there are a few little tricky bits to paint, and what I would always recommend is, if you can't see them, don't waste your time. If you want to paint everything, you're going to have to think about sub-assemblies sometimes when you don't put the whole model together before you paint it. I myself am a little bit too impatient for that, so that's why I'll be reaching into areas occasionally when I'm painting models, or leaving them completely. And I'm babbling a little bit now, so apologies. Okay, so that is those now done, and put that one aside. I'm going to grab the next orc that I'm working on. So for this one, I'm going to be using some Mournfang Brown for the bracelets going around it. Then I'll use a little bit of Corax White, I think, on the tooth that is on this one's bracelet. But let's get the brown painted first. So again, I want to be nice and careful as I'm putting this on. If I was going for more detail with these ones, what I'd probably do is a dry brush afterwards, but I'm not too worried with these ones, so I'll most likely go straight for a wash with most likely Nuln Oil, which we'll do in this video anyway. Okay, so that's the first one done. And as I've said in previous videos, I tend to spend more time and build up a lot more layers on character models than I do on squads, just because otherwise it'll take ages and ages to paint them. So I'm not too worried if there isn't tons and tons of detail on the squad models. There's that one. Nice and quick, nice and easy. So while I'm still on this, I'm going to do the Corax white on the tooth. Let's shake that a little bit more. That's better. So this is nice and easy with the white paint. Just to paint that little tooth there. So that is those sections painted. Now hopefully there's been enough time for me to bring back this first one, and I'm going to use some iron hand steel on any of the metallic sections. So firstly on this side I'm going to paint the knuckle dusters. I'm not too worried if I go slightly over on these bits. I'm going to be a little bit more careful on the little clasp there. And let's just paint the next ones along here. There we go. Okay, at this point I'm going to bring on some of the previous models that I've done. So you can see here these have got a glove painted as well as a Mournfan brown and a Rakarth flesh wrappings on there. And what I'm going to be doing with these, this is how I'm going to just finish these bits off. That's using some Nuln Oil. So obviously I've got the rest of the squad to do, but for now I'm just going to show you with these ones. So, loading my brush with Nuln Oil, I'm just going to paint over the glove section that I've started on, and I don't mind if I slightly go over the edges with the Nuln Oil. It's just going to knock the green back a little bit, go in any of the detailed sections. Sorry if that goes out of focus. But that's all I'm looking for with the glove there. Let's just a bit of that, knock a little bit of that back. There we go. And then the same with the wrappings. Just going to run my brush over the top of them. And the key thing with the Nuln Oil or any other wash that you're using, don't worry if it goes too far over any edges. As it dries it will knock back a little bit. So there's those ones there. So I'll put that to one side. Let's grab the other one. So you can also see on this one a hint of colour, which I've already added on this one. These orcs aren't from any specific clan. They are going to be for my orc Gene Stealer cult. So although these aren't necessarily infected orcs to become hybrids, these are orcs owing fealty and a psychic connection to their brood lord. So these are brood boys. and although they generally keep it secret, the odd one is going to have some colour on it. So there is that glove done there. Now let's do these wrappings. If you haven't seen any of my Orc Genestealer Cult videos, I'll leave a link in the description so you can have a look at those. Really enjoyable project. Not going to be a big army, but something with a little bit of character to hopefully look good on the display shelf, as well as have a few fun games with. And there is the wrapping. So obviously with these two, I'm going to let those dry for a little bit, but let's have a look at the colour. The main colour I'm going to use is some Genestealer purple, and I have on this one here a little tabard that I've got to paint. I'm also on the Orc Knob going to paint the Power Claw. Let's get that in focus. There we go. The Power Claw in the purple, and then I'm going to do a little bit more work on it. So let's open up this Genestealer purple, and the tabard's going to be nice and easy to paint on this one. I was contemplating making some of the skulls purple and things like that, but I quite like the idea of there being a little bit of subterfuge and their alliance not necessarily being quite that obvious. So I could, if I wanted to, use these in my other Orc army that I'm working on, and from the outset they'd look like just another squad of boys, but then they're secretly harbouring another alliance. But a few of them can't help themselves, and they've got a little bit of colour. But then likewise they could be mistaken for freebooters. So there's the purple on that one. Now let's have a look at the Power Claw. This one is going to be a little bit more obvious to any other orcs that it's a slightly different colour, but that's okay with this one. So what I'm going to do with this one is paint it the purple. I'm then going to let it dry a little bit before I do the next stage, which will be some little orc checkers going over it, but we'll still do that in this video. But I quite like the contrasting colour of the purple and the greens of these guys. So it's a little bit of kind of spot colour in there, jumps out a little bit. And then I've got another model as well that I've got slightly different detail to paint on it. Okay, so that's coming along nicely. After this video, I've got one more video for this series, and that's going to be finishing off the bases for these models. I originally wasn't going to do that video, but I've decided actually just to round off this little series, have a nice little basing video just for anyone who wants to see how to go about doing that with their models. Okay. Apologies if I stop talking while I'm doing this bit. I'm going to do some making videos soon where I'm answering questions that people have asked me. I did have one of the previous videos just to talk about where I work. I am a technician, off screen, sorry, a technician demonstrator on a model making course where we teach all of the skills of model making for the many industries in which it is a part of, which for me is not too surprising how many industries model making is involved in, but for others it can be a bit of a surprise, and you can get paid to make things every day of your life, which is really good. I used to be a freelance model maker, working in everything from advertising, production design to architectural model making. I've done a little bit of film work. But what I really enjoy is teaching people how to make models and do all of those different things. But I'll leave that there for now. I'll talk about it a little bit more in another video. But there we go. There is the first coat of purple done on that orc. Now let's grab next orc. So this is the whip on this orc. Now the first bit, which is going to be nice and easy on this, is again going to be some Mornfang brown, and I'm going to paint the handle and the end of the whip in the brown. And now this whip originally came from the Gretchen set. I'll always call them Gretchen, although they're called grots now. And it was the handler's whip. Now I have slightly overpainted it there, so what I will do is just water down my brush slightly and just gently rub that off. There we go. And then the last bit in this colour is going to be up on the top there. Now I was trying to think for a while what I could, how I could paint this whip. It's like, what materials could it be made of? And then I was thinking I'd quite like another contrasting colour. So the plan with this one, now that's all, yep, that's all done. A little bit more there. I'm going to make that metallic on the end there. Sorry if that's gone off shot for now. I think I'm going to try it in a yellow. So I have got, so I open the drawer in front of me with all my paints in. I've got some Avaland Sunset, and I'm going to use that to create a nice base coat of yellow. And what I want this to look like is an electrical cord that has been repurposed. So the wrapping's going around it. I'll do a different colour. Let's just get this base yellow put on. And I might, if I get the feeling to do it, is I might paint a few hazard stripes on a few bits, or I might not. I don't know yet. Just want to see how this turns out. It's the first time I've used this Avaland Sunset, that's what it's called, and I'm very impressed with how that's covering the green sections that were painted over when is doing the skin. So yeah, yellow isn't my favourite colour to paint. I still have to finish my Imperial Knight that I decided is going to become a yellow model, mainly because, I've got the brush, first droppage of the video. What was I saying? Oh yeah, mainly because I don't like painting yellow, so I wanted to paint something that I wouldn't normally paint, and I really quite enjoy doing that sometimes. Just get out of your comfort zone and paint something else. Okay, a little bit more yellow to paint. Now what I will do after I've painted this yellow is I'm going to let the yellow dry as well as the purple before I do anything else, because I don't want to have any bleed on the colours or anything like that. So for me it's going to be about 20-30 minutes drying time. For you guys it's going to be quite instant. Oh, sorry if that's been off camera. Okay, so there is that one just there. So let's. So there is the power claw and the whip there. I'm going to let these dry for a little while. Okay, so these have had a little bit of time to dry. First thing that I want to do is just get everything that I've painted purple, and I'm going to apply a shade of... I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. Let me know in the comments how you meant to say it. But let's give everything a little bit of this shade. Now what I want to do is give this time to dry. Let's just move those out of the way for now. Yeah, I find that because I do my hobby in kind of almost like an isolation with just me around, I tend not to go to any stores or anything like that. I never hear the pronunciation all the time of things. So yeah, I'm not even going to attempt that one. I'll probably find it later on and work out how to say it. But hey. This violet shade. Okay. Now let's do the power claw. So the reason why I'm putting the shade on now is I want to give it time to dry, so I can then dry brush and then add another wash afterwards when I've done a little bit of detail and so on. This will just add a little bit of depth to the colour before it goes to the next stage. So I'd really like to hear your comments on these videos. What do you think of them? Do you like having a series of videos about doing one thing? Would you prefer to see it in one video? I mean, that would be quite long because I tend to do the real-time videos, but I'd really like to hear back from you guys about what you're thinking about the stuff that I'm producing. Likewise, if you could, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. This is just my hobby. I don't get anything out of it apart from sharing the stuff with you guys at the moment. One day I might go a little bit further, who knows. Okay, so there is that shade wash on there. So what I'm going to do now is carry on working on this whip. Now I've decided I'm not going to put any hazard stripes on this for now, but I am going to paint the rest of the details on there, and I'm only going to use one colour. I'm going to stick with the Iron Hand Steel, and what I will do once it's dried is I'm just going to give this a wash. So let's start on the base of the whip, where I'll just paint that. Oh, did it off camera, apologies. Paint that silver. And now let's paint this here. So yeah, I have tried my best to stay on camera. Apologies when I move off camera. What I need to do is have a screen that I can see without having to look up at my camera, because the camera's right above me, so I tend to have to look off the model to then see what I'm doing. So I am thinking about a small screen just over that way, which would allow me just to quickly look up and see, or even just see out my peripheral vision, exactly what you guys can see. But like I said, this is my hobby, so not something I prefer to spend money on a model kit than on a little screen. But I might have a spare one somewhere from an old computer, but that means going into the loft, and that is full of a lot of stuff. Also full of a lot of hobby stuff, so I do go up there occasionally and find things that I forgot that I had. It's yeah. Does anyone else do that? Forget exactly what hobby stuff they've got because they bought because they bought it a long time ago, or things happen and you forget the things that you have, because I do. Okay, so that is now painted. Right, I am gonna let these dry for a little bit and then we'll carry on. Okay, so these have been drying. We'll come back to the purple in a second. While I was waiting for them to dry, I did actually have a look at how to pronounce this. Now there's two thoughts on this. There's a lot of things going around say it's Drucci violet, but I looked into it a little bit more for pronunciations of the syllables and things like that, because it's the kind of thing I do. And the D and is D, then the RU is a R, so dr, and then the CH, rather than being a ch as in cheese, it's a ok, it's like a K, like a K like lock, and then the II is a long E, so drucky. So Drucky Violet. I don't know if that's right. It could be Drucci, but I'm going to say Drucky Violet now. So that's answered my question from earlier on about how to pronounce it. Not that anyone really cares. Okay, so to finish off the whip, I am going to go with some Nuln Oil over the whole thing. So load my brush with some Nuln Oil. Ooh. And then starting on the bottom of the whip, I'm just going to run around the edge like that, and then let's load up my brush again and run along one side of the yellow here and the top, I've been thinking about what other little details I can add to things, but on this kind of like basic paint scheme, I'm not going to add too many details, but there are a few that I'm going to do when I get onto the checker painting of the power claw, because there's going to be a few things that I want to add to a few other weapons. Not sure how long this video is now, but as with all of them, real-time videos can either be really short or they could take quite a bit of time. But thank you so much for sticking around and watching the videos. Okay, so there is that whip painted. So let's clean the brush and bring in the three guys with purple on them. So these two have purple loincloths, and then this guy has the purple power claw. I'm going to start with the loincloths. I should have really looked how to pronounce this one up. Dracella lilac. Let's go with that. If I'm wrong, let me know. That would be a video, wouldn't it? Pronouncing all the different names of various Warhammer paints and other paints. Right, I'm just looking for a little dry brush. There we go. And this is going to be a bit of dry brushing on these little loincloths. Not too much, but I just want to get a little bit of colour onto there just to lighten it up slightly. There we go. So let's do a little compare and contrast. Just a slight lightness, not too much, but I'm quite happy with that. Okay, that's okay for that. Right, let's have a look at the power claw. I really need to get some new dry brushes. These ones are really getting to the end of their life. Okay, that's okay. Okay, I'm happy with that dry brushing. So now I want to go into the final details. And for that I'm going to use Corax White. And I'm going to apply this to a couple of models. So I'm going to start with this one just here with the sword. And likewise, I'm going to grab this one with the axe. So, orcs always have different kind of iconography on their person. So, like, they also have war paints and stuff like that. So, what I'm actually going to do on this one first, let's just move everything else out the way. On this sword, I'm going to paint some really sketched out triangles, and I'm not worried exactly like if it's really exact. I want these to look like the orc has painted them on. If I don't like them in the end, I can always paint over them. But I just want to paint a few little zigzags like that. And I might add a bit more detail to these later on, don't know, but yeah, so I've got that little zigzag there. Make sure I paint the back of the sword, and the key thing, I'm not worried if I miss any little bits. So now let's go to this side And I want 3 again. There we go. So doing it very quickly, free-handed, just to look like it's been painted by the orc itself. And from what I remember, all of these different symbols that the orcs put on, whether it's the checker plating, whether it's the little diagonals, there we go. That's fine. It's they all have meaning and things like that. So that is a little bit of diagonal detail on there. Like I said, it might actually, while I'm here, I'm going to touch this up a little bit while I'm here. There we go. And I don't mind if it doesn't look 100% tidy, as I said. There's that one. So let's look at the axe. So for the axe, I'm going to paint a zigzag. So going to paint a straight line there. Another one going like that. Another down like that. And then I'm going to give it some thickness. No, I don't like that. Okay, so I'm gonna water down my brush, just gonna rub that over the top. Might have dried a bit too quickly, but I'm gonna rub my thumb across it, doesn't matter. Okay, what I'm gonna do now, let's change this a little. So what am I doing? No, let's undo that completely. Okay. So with that rubbed off slightly, let's just get some Iron Hand Steel, the original colour. And I'm just going to roughly paint over. There we go. Okay, sorted. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I'll include the mistakes and the things I don't like just so you can see what they look like. You can still see it a little bit, so let's make sure that paint is covering it. Hey ho, there we go. Right, okay, let's ignore that one, but I'll leave it in because, yeah, that kind of stuff happens. So yeah, I do like the one on the sword, but let's go back to this one. So, what I want to do is put a checker pattern on this, and what I'm going to do it on this lower side of the power claw. I'm only going to do it on the top, I'm not going to worry about the bottom. And then at the same time, I'm going to put a bit of a diagonal pattern on one of the shoulder pads as well. So, there's a few ways you can go about doing this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start painting some squares. So there is the first square. So what I tend to do is do 2 edges, turn it 90 degrees, then do another 2 edges. Okay. Now the key thing with this, if it does go wrong, don't worry, you can always repaint over the top of it. So I've got a drawer open to the side of me and I keep hitting it, but never mind. A bit of white on the edge there, and that comes down, goes across. So there we have a bit of a checker pattern on there. And what I'm also going to do, just on this shoulder pad, I'm going to paint on a triangular pattern. So it's only going to be 2 triangles on this. I might, before the next video, do a lot more of this just to get little bits of detail and things, but we'll see. And I might even work out what to do on those axes. If you've got any suggestions, drop it in the comments. There we have that on there. So, final thing I want to do, I'm going to go back to my Nuln Oil, and I just want to add a bit of depth to the power claw. So wherever we've got a nut, a bolt, a spike, I'm just going to put a little bit of Nuln Oil just to pick up on that detail, like that. And I might checkerboard this a little bit more, but I'm going to let this dry and see exactly what it looks like. But there we go. Then a bit there and there. And there we go. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video of me painting the details on these orcs. I'll put a gallery at the end like I have been doing of all of these little details so you can see what they look like. But for now, thank you so much for tuning in. My name's John, and you've been watching War Games, Models, and Other Hobbies.